This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, my good friend, Paul Jasley.
Hello, humanoids.
And two crazy guys, Fake Petre.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay. And Fake Petre.
What's up, Mike? What's up, Paul?
Oh, thank you guys for joining me today. Very, very excited to talk comic books with you both today, and Paul, I guess, as well. But we're here to do that thing, so I'm just going to say, let's just dive right into it, because Greg and Fake, you guys are comic book creators. You just created a new series that came out or a new issue that came out, American Nature #1. You've been working on the Santos Sisters for, I believe, the 7th issue is coming out pretty soon. I'm really excited to hear what you got going on. But I guess for the folks at home that don't know you, Fake, let's start with you. Could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we jump into talking about comic books?
Sure. So, like you kind of just said, me and Greg have been working on the Santos Sisters for the last couple of years now, and it's been doing pretty good for us. So we've got that going, and then we've got the new book, American Nature Presents, like you said, that just came out. We had issue #1, and it looks like we're gonna keep going with that. So we'll have another issue towards the end of the year.
Hell yeah!
And that's currently what's going on with us. Yeah.
Awesome. Greg, and what about you? I guess, who are you? What do you do other than everything that Fake just said? Tell us something unique and interesting about yourself, please.
Well, I guess I'm the cartoonist slash production artist on the comic books. Not too much interesting about myself. I don't know where to begin with that one, but yeah, I'm the cartoonist in the books.
Well, no, that's perfect. Well, I guess then we should just dive in. I have two legally mandated questions that I usually ask on every single show that we record, which is, how have you been? How have comic books been? So, Greg, I'm going to kick it right back to you. Why don't we start with you? What have you been reading? How have you been? All of that stuff.
Oh, I've been good. Hey, not too bad. Let's see. You asking what I've been reading?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have recommended that I read Love and Rockets, and so I finally got a copy of the Fantagraphics collection of the first one, the Maggie the Mechanic. Just recently finished that.
Nice. And what did you think diving headfirst into the world of the Hernandez brothers, specifically Jaime Hernandez?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've always seen the art around. It's like a very famous book. The art's always looked nice to me, but to really dive into it, I didn't know what to expect. I knew it had like these punk rocker girls in it and stuff like that. I wasn't expecting like the international intrigue and the huge cast of characters that you find in it.
Yeah.
It's quite enjoyable. I mean, the artwork's amazing. I really got a kick out of that, and I'm looking at it right now. It's it's nice. I liked it.
Hell yeah. That's great to hear. I've heard that Jaime likes your work as well. I mean, Fake Greg, I don't know if you guys heard about that. Yeah. I think Paul heard about your book through Jaime Hernandez, so I'm glad to see that the respect is mutual, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, different levels, I suppose, but yeah, I kind of felt bad about not really knowing much about it, so that was kind of the impetus to taking it on. Plus
Gotcha.
It's a huge book with cultural significance and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's always kind of interesting going back, because I've read Love and Rockets. It's one of my favorite comics. I've read it a few times, and like, it's funny to go back and read that first collection, because it feels so different from what comes later. I think when you get to by the end of that first volume into the second volume, like, Jaime's pared down the story and the cast to be like focused more, you know what I mean? And his artwork becomes less detailed, becomes cleaner and more focused. And it's like kind of amazing to see him work through his style to finally get to the end of that first volume to get what we know as Jaime now. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun to see an artist kind of work through that stuff in real time while you're reading it.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely see it from the first issue. I mean, I mean, from the first story, where well, so yeah, no more dinosaurs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Unfortunately, yeah, the dinosaurs and the rocket ships kind of disappear the further you go into it. It becomes more focused on Maggie as a character and less about her being a mechanic. So, but there's more punk rock and there's more pro wrestling the deeper you get. So maybe that fills in that gap for you.
Okay. All right. Well, I've already got the second volume. I've got
that's
one
the
of
good stuff right there.
I've got one of Gilbert's books too. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, Fake, have you read any of Jaime Hernandez's work? Have you looked through Maggie the Mechanic or anything like that?
Look through, correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
No, that's good.
I'm not much of a reader. No, so like I live here in Mexico, and like I do mostly like home remodeling and stuff like that. So like right now, like this week, we like ran gas lines to like a 6-story building, like up and down, and it's got like 6 apartments and 2 storefronts. So that's my big thing this week. And then I'm also working on the issue 8, so I've got that going on and stuff like that. So not a lot of reading, but a lot of work.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it. That sounds like very hard work, and I'm glad you're doing it. Yeah. Well, I guess Paul, let me bounce over to you. How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been great. It is officially summer here in West Michigan. The weather's been beautiful the past couple of days, so I've been trying to make time to read comics instead of spending time at the beach. I'm not going to bring comics to the beach, so I have to split my time that way. So
sure.
But a book came out this week that I was very excited for. Is Zatanna Bring Down the House #1. It's a new miniseries from DC, part of their Black Label imprint. And I remember when this book was announced a couple months ago, I was ready to declare it my favorite book of the year before I even read it. So based on the creative team alone. So it's written by Mariko Tamaki with art by Javier Rodriguez. And, if you know Mariko Tamaki, she wrote This One Summer, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, Roaming, an amazing writer. Javier Rodriguez did the Defenders miniseries with Al Ewing recently, an amazing artist. So them working together on one of my favorite sort of obscure DC magical characters, it was like a book feels made for me specifically. So it lived up to the hype. I really loved the first issue a lot. Zatanna, of course, is a magician. She's working in Las Vegas doing the stage show. And this series kind of focuses more on her personal life. I think she's a character that kind of just shows up randomly in DC Comics. And you don't get to know much about her like background or origin so much. That she's has this magical power. Her father was a magician. But this series, it kind of steps back a little bit and you get to see her as a character, as a person. She's working in Las Vegas and she's just doing a simple stage show. There's no actual magical powers. She's just doing like card tricks, visual like illusions and stuff. And it's hinted at that something happened to her when she was younger that made her hesitant to use her actual magical abilities. By the end of the issue, of course, she's forced to do that by, basically a demon showing up during her stage show. So I feel like the story is going to like unravel from there. We'll get more background on her as a character, which I really like. Again, she's a character I've always enjoyed, but to know more about her background is kind of intriguing. And the artwork is obviously amazing. Rodriguez is such an amazing artist because he's able to play with page layouts that are unconventional, but they're never like confusing. You know what I mean? Like you're never lost on what's happening on the page. You're able to follow it, even though it's not a traditional grid layout on the page. So there's like one moment later in the issue where this demon shows up on stage during Zatanna's stage show, and like everyone in the audience is like running away to the exit. But rather than having a panel of that happening, like Javier Rodriguez draws all these like little figures like running down the borders of the page, like down the gutters. So it's like he's illustrating that they're leaving, but he's also showing them running down the aisles of the theater that they're in at the same time. And it's not distracting from the actual story that's going on, but you just know what's happening visually from that. So it's like, I really love the way he's able to kind of play with layouts and visual tricks without it feeling gimmicky or complicated. So it's a beautiful looking book. I think it's 5 or 6 issues. So I love the first one. I'm ready for the rest of them now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, wasn't sure if this was a newer series or not, but yeah, I'm seeing that I think that it just dropped in June. So
yep.
Very excited stuff. Well, let me talk a little bit about what I've been up to. I have been reading prose like a jerk, not reading comic books. I'm reading actual books. Can't believe it. I've betrayed all of you, I know, especially our good pal Danny. But I did sit down and read some comics. I blazed through like 300-page books in like 4 days, and then I was like, okay, I should read some comics. I decided to read 8 volumes of Hellboy in a row. This is by Mike Mignola. If you don't know, art by Mike Mignola, except for later we get a little bit of art from Duncan Fegredo, who becomes a regular collaborator with Mignola, and P. Craig Russell and Richard Corbin also do some art on one of the volumes as well. Colors throughout the whole series by the one and only Dave Stewart, one of the greatest colorists in history. I don't really know if there's much to be said here that hasn't already been said. It's Hellboy. It rules. It's very simple. It's straightforward. I think I've read volume 1 of this series like 5 times over in the last 15 years. Like every several years, I just want to pick up volume 1 and I'm like, this is the time I'm going to read Hellboy. And it turned out it took me, from my introduction of Hellboy, the character, way back when the movie came out in 2004 to today, 20 years later, for me to actually sit down and read beyond just volume 1, A Seed of Destruction. I do think that having all of the digital editions of this like at my fingertips, thanks to like the most recent Humble Bundle, plus it turns out I bought this series, like the 12 volumes available like 3 times over through Humble Bundles because I'm a sucker. But having those just on my iPad ready to go, reading one after another was very nice to just like, blaze through the story. I do think that part of my intimidation for reading this series over the years has been the worry that I would need to know way too much about Hellboy and the world and lore and history and all this stuff to enjoy Hellboy. And it turns out that you can be a dummy like myself and you can still enjoy Hellboy quite a bit because Mignola tells an incredibly fast-paced, easy to understand story. And for everything that you don't understand, all of the answers all the questions you have get answered very slowly but surely as you read throughout the series. I don't know if most comic book fans have that kind of patience nowadays to wait multiple years to get answers to very simple questions about like the mystery of a character. But I think Mignola, when you read through these first 6 volumes at least, does a good job of establishing a bunch of like mystery and then slowly but surely revealing it. But the thing that really got me about reading, especially the first 6 volumes, but getting through volume 8, was like how scattershot the publishing history of the series was. Like as you're reading through the volumes, Mignola just adds like these 1-page descriptors of like, oh, this is originally published over 2 pages at a time over 12 issues of this other book, or here's a 2-issue series that we published in 8-page segments across this Dark Horse magazine that was all about horror, and here's another story that we did that was published in this other magazine, and they kind of were published at the same time, and it was fine. People, I guess, figured it out, but here's it's all collected, and I added 2 more pages to the volume. It's really interesting to think of a comic book being published like that nowadays, because I don't even think comic readers have the patience for that, which is bizarre, because somehow the fans back in the 90s and early 2000s loved this so much that it became this massive successful thing. And maybe the BPRD series coming out alongside of this helped. I don't really know the history with BPRD. I think at one point I sent Nick an image from like Multiversity Comics that's like, here's the chronological order of everything you need to know about Hellboy, and it's like 500 pages long, over every single issue in what publication order they came out, and then the chronological publication or chronological order in which they happened in the Hellboy timeline. And I was like, I don't have time for this. Why would you make this thing? But yeah, I don't know. I really liked it. Really am loving the 8 volumes of Hellboy that I read. I think I have 3 or 4 more left until I'm done with quote unquote Hellboy. And then there's all the Hellboy 1954, Hellboy in Hell, Hellboy and all those other things. But yeah, I like the conciseness of the story, reading it all in like one go. Like especially you said those first 6 volumes, with the idea being Hellboy will destroy the world, and Hellboy basically says, fuck that, I don't want to do that, which is pretty fun to read. So yeah, I don't know, it's nice to read a story that's got like a lot of huge world building and lore, and then having a main character who's kind of just like, yeah, this is stupid, I'm gonna shoot it with a gun. So I don't know, it's pretty fun. I've got the next 3 volumes or 4 volumes lined up. It's a whole lot of BPRD as well, I think. So who knows how far I'll go down this rabbit hole, but I'll at least, I feel confident that I will get to the end of Hellboy, and I'll feel pretty happy to actually understand like all of the cool Hellboy stuff that it turns out has been like riffed and meme to death on the internet already. So everything's starting to come into context, complete context now. So that's what I've been up to. It's been good.
Nice.
All right, have you guys read Hellboy at all? Greg, Fake, you guys big fans of that stuff at all?
I've seen the movie, and I'm a fan of the artwork. I like Mike Mignola's style. He's really good with the black spotting and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost was like, when Duncan Fegredo took over for one volume, I think he becomes like the regular artist on a lot of the Hellboy stuff. I almost couldn't tell the difference until like I noticed that some of the shadowing was different. Like that, because it's so stylistic in how Mike does his shadow work.
Right.
But Fake, have you read any Hellboy or anything like that?
No, not at all. But I have the movie, like Greg said, yeah, in the old one though. When did it even come out? Like 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was 2004 it came out. Yeah.
That was a decent movie, right? Was there two of them?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think they did two of them, and I think the problem was that like the second one just wasn't well received, even though it was pretty good and accurate to the comic. But I think Guillermo del Toro is determined at some point in his life to get Hellboy back off the ground, because I know that he's like a prolific fan of Hellboy and everything Mignola does.
Was he part
of fingers crossed
when it was rebooted a couple years ago? Was he part of that as well, or was that somebody else?
No, I think somebody else. I don't think he was.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But if you want something quick and easy to read, I recommend Hellboy. It's pretty fun. Let's move on. Let's talk about comic books that are on the top of our pile, comics that we're going to be reading next that we're excited for. We're just trying to get off of our shelves, new or old. I'm going to shout out some of the folks that are hanging out with us on our Discord today, who managed to drop in on this very last minute notification that we were recording today. Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading God Loves, Man Kills 2. I don't know if that's a real thing or if they were just saying they were reading X-Men books, but if there's a sequel to God Loves, Man Kills, I might have to slam my head in a door. Stephanie is going to be reading Middle West by Scotty Young, a book that I can't seem to get over the art style, but I've heard very, very good things about. So, Stephanie, let us know what you think of that. But let me kick things over to you, Paul. What is on the top of your pile?
Well, it's probably no surprise that two people that listen to the show regularly, but top of my pile is the Best of 2000 AD Volume 6. This is the last collection that they're doing of these Best of 2000 AD collections. I've raved about this series on the show multiple times. This is, of course, collection of material from the long-running British comic 2000 AD. They've been doing these volumes where they collect a classic Judge Dredd story along with some other 2000 AD properties, and then a newer Judge Dredd story. This is the final volume. It includes a new Dredd story by Robbie Morrison and Henry Flint. The classic Dredd story in here is The Hot Dog Run by Alan Grant and Ron Smith, which is one of my favorite Judge Dredd stories. This is the story where Dredd takes a bunch of cadets, like rookie judges, out into the cursed earth for training. And of course, the punchline is like he takes out like 20 people, only 10 of them survive, and only 2 get the pass to become full-fledged judges. And then the punchline is like, oh yeah, Dredd's getting soft in his old age, so it's a classic story. Sorry to spoil the ending, but it's a great story. And I think that's what I like about Judge Dredd is like the Wagner and Grant stuff. Like it's like dark and action packed, and it's pretty grim, but it's also very funny at times. I think Hot Dog Run is a good example of that. Like it's called The Hot Dog Run. Of course it's gonna be a funny story, and it's Judge Dredd. So but one story in this volume that I've never read, I'm very curious about, is a series called Shaco. And I did a little research on what this is, and apparently Shaco is the only polar bear on the CIA death list, and that's the title character of this comic strip. So the description on the 2000 AD website is that Shaco was a polar bear who unwisely swallowed a capsule containing secret government-created germ warfare culture, thinking it was a tin of food, and since then became a target of CIA agents in the North Pole. So the fact that 2000 AD could do a whole comic based on a polar bear that's being hunted by the CIA after swallowing a chemical warfare, that's pretty amazing. So I'm very curious what that's going to be like.
Interesting. Greg and Fake, I'm just throwing this out there. You guys going to do another issue of American Nature? This is the kind of stuff you can throw right into your magazine. I'm just saying. 2000 AD can do it. So can you. Let's pop over to you, Greg. What is on the top of your pile? What book are you reading next?
I was just at Heroes not too long ago, and I picked up the first 2 volumes. I don't know if it's the whole run, but of Humans by Tom Neal and Keenan Marshall Keller, I should say.
Okay.
I remember hearing about this like whenever it came out. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 10 years. 2015 it says. I liked how it looked back then, and I'm glad to finally pick it up. Those guys are really cool. And I think they're doing I think they're continuing the story soon, so be nice to get caught up on that before they do that. Have you guys
for folks?
Have you guys read The Humans?
For folks at home, I was gonna say I haven't. Could you tell us what this story's about?
Well, from what I can tell, it's about a motorcycle gang, and they're all gorillas, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I know. Like the whole.
Okay.
All the characters are some kind of ape humanoids, but the artwork's really great.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking through it now. I see. I'm seeing covers what look like should be on like the Sons of Anarchy TV show, but it's all gorillas.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
how you describe it. Yep.
I like it. Well, yeah. Well, you have to let us know what you thought of it. Send me an email once you finish this and let me know if I should pick this up. Because I think I remember when this book was coming out, and I was a little skeptical because I'm like, it's a biker gang and they're apes. How can what is interesting about this? But if you're saying that, I mean, I guess I didn't realize who was on this book. So maybe I'll have to give it a look. If you say it's good, if you let us know.
Okay.
Well, let me talk about a book that I am reading next, and that is Gratuitous Ninjas. This is by Robert Wimberly. Originally, this is a Kickstarter on from Beehive Books. It looks really cool. It's really unique because in the printed edition, which I unfortunately did not get because it was like $100, it is an accordion style comic. It is one continuous page of comic book. Where as you open it up further, you get more and more of the story, and it's done in this like weird little vertical scroll where, like, honestly, if you strap this thing to like a wheel and you kind of just pulled it through around the edge of the wheel, you could like read this comic as you scroll through it. It looks really cool. It's like a ninja story about this ninja group who run in the shadows of New York against this anarchist, quote, pirates, Pyrates, that run the streets. Some big fight, a lot of big combat. Wimberly's art is beautiful. Pretty much what drew me to the book and why I was like, oh, I gotta buy this. I don't even care. It's, I think the digital edition was like $10 or something, and I was like, I can check this out. And I was scrolling through it earlier today, and it looks like chaos. Which in a good way. Like, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of just like sketchy lines and very pointed angles that kind of like suck you into the action that's happening. It's almost like someone has a camera on a pendulum that seems to just be swinging through a scene as people are fighting, on the streets of New York. The art or the colors in this book are really bright and pop, and they kind of clash together in a way that is almost gross to look at, but then you realize it's just like a big like chromatic kind of wash over your face as you're reading through things. I'm really not entirely sure what to expect from the whole book, but the premise of just pirates versus ninjas on the streets of New York seems really dumb and fun, and the art looks really cool. So that's why I'm on board. So I'm very excited to dig into this. Plus it's literally like 600 pages long. Of a comic book, but it's like this just continuous action, which I'm very excited to see how Wimberly pulls that off. So going to be diving into that next, maybe after I finish the next 4 volumes of Hellboy, but it's on my to read list. It's probably right at the top there. I should probably just read it, take a break from Hellboy for a little bit, but that is me. But yeah, I should say let's move on to the last bit of our show here. Got a couple questions for Greg and Fake here who are hanging out with us. Paul, I don't know if you have anything on the top of your mind that you want to jump into with these guys, but we met the two of you, Greg and Fake, at C2E2 this past year. It was nice to hang out and just chit chat and stuff. I got a really beautiful Gambit sketch from you, Greg, so thank you for that. But yeah, I don't know, Paul. Why don't you kick us off here?
Well, I've talked about Santos Sisters on the show a few times, so I'm sure regular listeners know my take on it. But I'm just curious, what's the sort of like short elevator pitch if you're telling somebody who's never read Santos Sisters what it's about?
Yeah, Fake, you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, you want to explain that?
Well, sure, kind of. I kind of describe it as kind of like a sitcom about starring two sisters who happen to be superheroes. Because it doesn't really, like, if you read the book, it's not, like, sure they, they have to, fight off villains and stuff like that, but it's more based about, the comic's more based around their, their everyday life as they're doing things, that whether they're going to the store or dating their boyfriends or whatever, and then they just happen to have to, fight off Bridget Spinner or 8-Ball or somebody like that who, come in and cause some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great summation. And I think anyone that sees the book gets the sort of Archie comics influence right away. It's there visually as well. It's like little slice of life, sort of like, sitcom-y sort of vibe. I'm curious, for Greg, is that something that when you started working on the book, were you channeling that stuff initially, or is that just how your style developed to kind of mimic that Archie style?
Well, initially we were just working on the characters and kind of their storyline and stuff like that. The art style was a lot different, and we were actually hiring someone else to draw it.
No.
Yeah, but I had been, I don't remember exactly why, but I'd been like trying to train myself how to do the Archie style. I think I was gonna try to get a job at Archie. I thought maybe creator-owned comics weren't the way to go, and I should just get a job doing something else. But it ended up kind of lending itself to what we were doing with the Santos Sisters. So I had tried one of the stories in that Archie house style that I had been training myself to learn, and it kind of worked. So from there we just decided to go with that, and it really works well because it's a nice easy fun style, and you don't have to think about it. It doesn't what am I trying to say? The style kind of sits in the background. You don't notice it as much, if that makes sense. It just kind of lets.
No, I think that totally works.
Yeah, just kind of lets it be fun and all that.
Yeah, and it kind of.
I think it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like the way it's kind of manifested, with everything kind of piggybacking on the Archie and everything like that. How we do like the shorter stories, and it kind of just works to our strong suits too, because we're both very kind of short attention spans. It's hard if you're making a comic book, it's unbelievably hard to like do something for 20 pages or 50 pages. But when you're doing a short story that's 3 to 7 pages, it's a lot easier to knock it out and finish things and feel like you're accomplishing things and to keep the momentum going, as opposed to if you're in the middle of a 100-page story, it's just there's a feeling that you're never going to finish. But when you're doing something that's you're able to keep that energy going when you're doing something that's so short, because it's just that instant gratification of finishing something.
Gotcha. So you're telling me you don't want to do a 600-page continuous page film strip style comic or anything? That's what I'm hearing.
I don't think we're capable of doing
that. Okay. Gotcha. Well, yeah. So you guys have been working on Santos Sisters for a little while, and I think the thing that we've talked about a lot on the show is like the newsprint style comic that you guys do. You guys print in a very particular way, in a very particular style. How did you go about choosing like this is how we want it? We want this comic book to come out to people versus like the typical glossy paper, glossy everything, very simple pages like your Marvel and DC comics where everything's kind of just very thin page comics. Yours has like a thicker feel. How did you go about choosing that? Fake, maybe I don't know which one of you made that decision, but maybe I'll kick it over to you first.
We both, when you're going through like the bins at a comic book shop, there's just something that's, I don't know, like, the feeling you get when you're looking at the older like comic books from like the 80s and stuff like that that feel like a comic book, as opposed to a lot of the new stuff, a lot of the new papers, it's everything's so glossy and so shiny and stuff. I think there's just something really romantic about like that old style of like what a comic book used to look like. And we obviously, we Greg did a lot of work going, calling printers and doing a lot of the legwork to make sure that we found a printer that could replicate that style. And we lucked out. We found a place that's really close in Illinois that we do the printing called Swift, and they handle the printing for us, and they can match that exact style. But we chose that specifically because it's the romantic. There's like a romanticness to it, and then there's just the collectability. Like we feel like if we're going to be putting something out, we feel like it's something that you're going to want to hold on to and not throw out. We feel like that lends it to it being printed in a specific style.
Totally.
Which is kind of funny because the whole idea originally of newsprint was that it was cheap and disposable.
Right. Yeah, I was just gonna say it's very recyclable, isn't it? So I think the other thing I was curious about that is like when you're going for that type of printing, do you have to do something special to like make the colors work for the color pages? Because I imagine it's not the same as these high print, these glossy pages, but I think there's a little bit easier way to print like different color variations and stuff like that. Greg, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. You talked to the printers and everything about that?
Yeah, actually it is a little different. Most printers are going to be printing in four colors, even the digital. But when you're printing on newsprint, what you have to keep in mind is that since it's on those big rolls of paper, you have to worry about registration errors. Not so much nowadays because they got computers that are constantly adjusting for it. But
sure.
So the only extra step we take is getting the blacks like on a separate channel so they overlay the colors. That way, if there is a little bit of shift, like the black shifts a little bit, you still have color underneath to allow for the shifting. Otherwise, if you send something in that's all four colors pressed together, underneath the black will be white. So if there's a shift, you'll get little white lines popping through. So you have to. It's called black overlays, and that's like one little extra step you have to take. And there's also rich blacks, which is there are other things you have to take a little bit extra care with that, as opposed to just sending in what you have on your computer.
Yeah. If you guys take a look at like like what's Greg mentioning right now, like we printed the first issue 3 different times. So like the very first time we printed the first issue, we didn't have the black set up correctly. So you can see there's like areas and like the white shift a little bit inside on the pages and stuff like that on the first printing. But if you were to get the third printing, you can see that we were able to correct those type of issues. So maybe it doesn't look as cool, like it's kind of like on that first printing, it kind of looks like maybe like an older, like 70s comic book where the registrations are off a little bit more, but that wasn't on purpose. It was just because we did it wrong.
Collector's edition is what I'm hearing. Collector's edition. I love it. No, that's really cool. And looking at American Nature, then American Nature came out in black and white. I think for the most part, the cover is in color. What made you choose, I guess, like to start another comic / magazine on top of your regular comic book series with a Santos Sisters story in it, plus collaborations from other people? Like that seems like a massive endeavor to start working on top of having your regular book come out, on top of everything else you've got going on in your lives. I guess, Fake, to you, I mean, like, how did this book come about, and how did you guys start to get all these other folks to work together to collaborate on it?
Well, it came about because with especially with like the indie part of the comic book industry, there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of things that are missing. There's a lot of there's not a lot of ways to promote your book. There's not a lot. I mean, it's great that there's podcasts and things like that, but there's not as many as there should be, I feel. There's not enough tastemakers out there telling people what to read, what to look at. It's hard to promote your book. And so this is I kind of look at the American Nature Presents as like our comics journal to our American Nature print line or whatever. So or Santos.
Yeah.
So it's just another way to promote the book. So like the idea is each issue that's going to come out, the Santos Sisters will be on the cover, and we're going to get like a different guest star. So like the first issue had Tedward, which is the Josh Pettinger's creation. So that kind of worked out really kind of funny. Issue 2, we've got somebody lined up really crazy for issue 2. I won't spoil it right now. I won't let the cat out of the bag, but we've got a really great guest star for issue 2. And then
sure,
I just feel like there's if I had more time and more money, there's so many more things that like a lot of like it's because once you put out a book, if you're even putting it out on Image or you're putting it out yourself, it's very hard to like find ways to promote your book. So we want to use this as like a way for like other creators, that they've got different projects that they're working on. Maybe they can work with us to like just ways to do cross promotion. You saw that and we'd love to get you guys working with us too. We had a couple of like podcasters write little articles for us and things like that.
Right.
So it's kind of just a way to like cross promote, because like it's very hard to everybody's doing something, everybody's doing their podcast, but for like to get to expand your audience, it's very hard in this industry, because it's just I just feel like there's just people there's just not like one place to look. It's kind of all over the place.
Right.
Kind of want to just kind of add something to it, because one of the big pieces that I feel like that's very important to the comic book industry is the comic book stores. And a lot of the people these days who are making books are going straight with the Kickstarters and going straight with direct to consumers. And I feel that when you take the comic shops out of the equation that are already there, that I feel that that's something we shouldn't be doing. I feel like everybody should be fostering the stores as much as possible to make sure that they stay around, because I feel that that's the biggest way to attract a new audience, is to keep the stores in business and have healthy functioning stores. So I feel like putting a book out like this that goes straight to the comic book stores, that helps promote the different parts of the community, whether it's the podcast, different books and things like that. I think that's kind of the motivation to put this out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting that this comes out. I think there was an online magazine that came out for a while called Panel X Panel, which is pretty good. It ran for 60 issues, I think.
Okay.
And I think the thing that's the only reason I bring that up is because I think that there is that chunk of the comic world missing, right? Like there's one thing to go to blogs and go to different websites and stuff, but the comic book magazine, I think, is kind of gone. It's nice to see that someone's trying to put out something that is a replacement for maybe, what was it, Wizards magazine or something like that way back in the day. I'm not saying that this is an exact clone of that, but it is nice to see another like just magazine of like, here are some things you should know about the industry. Here are people working in the industry talking about their time and experience. Plus you get a couple comics in here as well. So like I do appreciate that like all in one thing, because I have seen others, like Boxes, for instance, is one that just came out pretty recently, but only on Kickstarter. I don't know if it's getting printed, where it's getting sent to, but it's not going to comic book shops. It's not in a place where people can browse. And I think that's what's nice about American Nature, is it's going to show up, or American Nature Presents is it's going to show up in a comic shop where someone can grab it, they can browse it, they can take it home just like you would any other magazine. So yeah, I really appreciated that. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, it blows my mind that like Marvel and DC and Image don't push to have because when Wizard was coming out, it was like it's a big deal. It's kind of a big deal to everybody. Like people enjoy that type of thing. People want to people want to put out their book to get it listed in their top lists and all the best artists. Just goofy things like that. People enjoyed like when people. I think that's what's missing in a lot of things. I think with like just the way media has changed recently, there's not enough people telling you what to like there used to be, whether it's like MTV or like however it was. I think there's something special about like someone going through and like picking, like curating like content and like it's like like now you just put on YouTube and your algorithm, from it just kind of creates whatever, and you're listening to whatever kind of music it's telling you to. But like when you used to put on the radio and like you discover new things and you'd hear like I think there's something valuable to that we miss
Right.
these days. The way that things are just kind of like shoved to us just based on our own recommendations these days, as opposed to somebody else telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I definitely can see that. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, like, I think that also like ties in with the fact that your books are so focused on being physical media as well. Like, I think as someone, I personally like really love physical media. And I think that kind of lends itself to going to a store, and a good comic book store that is curated, that it will have like cool people working there that say like, this is the kind of stuff you should check out. Oh, if you like this book, check this out. There's so much media saturation that having that filtration process of a good curator really helps. And I think physical media is almost easier to do that with, because you have to be in the store to get it, to have that recommendation. So it all kind of ties together. I think I can understand where you're coming from to make it that way, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I've based my whole, like when I was a kid, I used to love like collecting baseball cards. I would collect, like I would buy all those, like we were kind of kids when like when all that comic book speculating was going on in like the early 90s and stuff like that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Those like polybag books and like holograms and all that kind of stuff. And there's something very cool about, like wanting to, get different things like that, and like to make like something that's specifically collectible. So like as we're going through and making the issues, we're trying to be, we keep that in the back of our head to like make something that, people are going to want to hold on to.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, your books look great. I'll just say that. If you haven't had one in your hands, folks, you got to find one. They're really great. So one other thing I wanted to bring up is I noticed this while I was doing a quick little Google search before today's chat. I saw that Santos Sisters Volume 1 is coming out from Fantagraphics in March of next year. Can you tell us a little bit about that collection? Like, can we expect the same quality print? Any extras? I mean, I want to go pre-order this as soon as possible, but I want to know, from the creators, what can I expect out of this book? I don't know, Greg, do you have any thoughts, or I'll start with you.
Oh yeah, well, I could comment on the printing. We are still. It's going to be slightly better quality paper, I'm sure, but we're still doing uncoated paper for that.
Okay.
We're collecting the first five volumes, the first 5 issues. That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. No, I know that maybe one of the only challenges we know that folks who listen to our show and that are on our Discord and hang out with us pretty regularly their problem is that they don't get copies of this comic to their shop, because it is kind of a smaller print series, and we always tell them go pre-order. But still, the fact that we found out we started telling them about the series after it was a couple issues in, or the hype started to build up around the book around. I think everyone will be very excited to hear that a new volume is coming. So I know I'm excited to have one on my shelf, so I don't have to go digging through my back issue bins or the bins at home that I have to try to find your issues.
Yeah That's cool you guys saw that. We haven't officially announced it or anything, but we do get a lot of people that say, this book looks interesting, but when are you guys going to come up with a collection? I only there's a lot of people that only read collected volumes. They only like the trade paperbacks.
Yeah.
So it's going to be nice.
Well, I didn't mean to blow up the spot necessarily.
You heard it here first.
Exactly.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's cool. I guess I'm curious. How did the agreement with Fantagraphics come about? Did you guys just friends talking to friends, or what happened there? Fake, I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Well, a while back, I think I tried to sell Fantagraphics ad space in our comic book.
Oh, okay.
They politely turned it down, but I was able to keep so that's of
funny.
The genesis of it. So we were able to talk with the Eric over there, Eric Reynolds, and he's the guy who worked the deal up with us. And no, I know I think, I'm not exactly sure how exactly they got the book in their hands originally, but they had gotten copies somehow, and no, and I was just like, we're so far in, would you guys be interested? And they were like, oh yeah, totally. So That's how it's going to go.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be like a hardcover, kind of like the Disney books they put out. So it's going to be kind of thicker stock paper. They're still working on the cover. So like the image that's like listed, like I think on like what you guys saw, like it's just like an early metadata release or something like that that kind of pushed the information. Like so that's just kind of like a holder space for the cover, but they're working up something a little bit more interesting.
Gotcha. That's very exciting. I really do appreciate the quality of those books, so I'm really excited to see what they do with Santos Sisters.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Colors should pop really nice on that paper, I think.
Hell yeah. Well, Paul, did you have any other questions, I guess, here before we wrap up? Because
I have one question, and this is weirdly specific. And I guess it's directed toward you, Greg, and your artistic influence. We talked about the Archie influence. And I remember when I read the first issue of Santos Sisters, there's a moment where the main characters, Alana and Amber, they turn into their superhero like counterparts. And there's an image of them holding these giant, like Rob Liefeld-esque guns. And I was like, is there like a weird early image influence on this book as well? I'm just kind of curious if that was like intentional, or if you want to pivot and talk about other artists that influence your style other than Rob Liefeld, I guess.
No, totally.
Okay.
Yeah, Liefeld, totally. I think Fake originally wanted the guns to be bigger, but for whatever reason that didn't happen. I've actually been making an attempt to get them a little more bombastic, but yeah, definitely both of us read a lot of the extreme titles back in the day.
Nice.
Other than that, I really like Gru the Wanderer for comic books. That's always like his pacing and his humor style is it's just the best. That's one of my favorites, and then I don't know if I'm listing my favorite comic books, I would say Gru, Flaming Carrot Comics by Bob Burden. I don't know if you guys have read that. That stuff's really good.
Yeah.
Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh, yeah, that's some good shit right there.
And then I really love Cerebus the Aardvark.
Gotcha.
I mean, I can see all that influence, because that's like, especially the Gru that Sergio Aragonés, and like his, you mentioned like his pacing, like it's classic cartooning. Like you don't even need words. It's just so good in terms of body language and expression. Like you don't even need dialogue in those comics. Just he's such a great cartoonist. I can kind of see that in the style in the Santos Sisters as well. Just so visually striking.
And a lot of characters and things that we've come up with. Me and Greg have been friends for, I don't know, a long time. And so like a lot of the stuff is like stuff that we've had for like, even if it's just kind of a one-off drawing we did or something that we did 30 years ago, we're able to kind of pick up pieces and kind of like bring it forward into these things. Like, for example, like that Scope character in the first issue was literally just like a one-off drawing that Greg did probably like 2001 or something like that we were able to like kind of like bring back to life.
Hell yeah.
Some character.
No, Scope actually goes back further, and to what you were saying, Paul, that I had drawn that in my I originally came up with that character in my teenage years when I was reading all the Liefeld books and stuff like that. He's got a cybernetic eye that can really target the guys, and it's connected to his cybernetic shoulder mounted laser.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very young blood character. That makes total sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, I can't wait for the all pouches issue of Santos Sisters. Should be really fun. Well, I think to wrap things up here, Greg, Fake, where can people find you on the internet? Where should they find your comic books to maybe pre-order or purchase from? Maybe Greg, will start with you and then kick over to Fake.
You can find us on Instagram, Greg and Fake, SantosSisters.com. You can just Google us, all that.
Yeah, you can pre-order the hardcover from Fantagraphics from the Fantagraphics website. So that would be if people who have not gotten the single issue and don't want to track them down, you could pre-order that and you will have it shipped to you March 2025.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Hell yeah. Well, cool. We'll make sure to drop all the links to that stuff in the show notes for folks that are interested. Please go buy this book. Please go find it wherever you can, or buy it from Fantagraphics, because if what Fake said is true, it's going to be a very, very, very nice hardcover. So I'm very excited to get one of those on my shelves as well. I think to wrap things up, I want to say thank you again, Greg and Fake, for coming on the show. This has been a blast talking to you both about comic books today. I appreciate you working through all of our technical difficulties that we had this afternoon to make things happen. But hopefully we can have you back in the future. Maybe we can make something happen for the next issue of American Nature or something like that. We'll chat about that over email or whatever. But I want to say thank you to Nick for proof listening to today's show. Thank you for everybody listening live. Thank you out there for listening to the show in general. Thank you to Paul for being here. Thanks to Zander for editing. I think next week's show is going to be us live on Twitch talking to Malachi Ward about comic books and just having a blast. So that should be really fun. So until next time, I say thanks for listening. Comics are good, and so are you.